Hello and welcome to Trad Jazz Today. Dan Zeilinger has been a world-traveling trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of his most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at the Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials around the world. Dan has met many people during his career and has spent many hours on and off stage with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on weekends with their friends. They all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, Dan will be sharing them with you. Now, Dan Zeilinger.
Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody who I admired from the front of the stage, not because I was enamored with him, but those women in that band. My God. And this is Mr. Brian Simpson, who was the drummer with, as you may guess, the Wooden Nickel Jazz Band. I've talked about them so many times on this show. And he's done, of course, much more since then and before then. And I want to find out about all of that.
Sure.
All I know, anybody who can play the heck out of Jungle Boogie is okay with me. So,
well, Wooden Nickel was a great time. I got to tell you, 10 years. I'd have to say that over those 10 years was probably the most I've laughed at any point. Okay, let's go way back. I'm a fifth generation Sacramentan. Not a lot of people can say that.
Wow.
My mother still lives in the house that I grew up in Greenhaven. I'm a product of the Sacramento Public Schools and the public school music program through Paul Warschmidt, who's still a very dear friend.
Well, let's start there.
Okay.
Slow down. We have quite a bit of time here that we can spend to get
Sure.
to know each other.
Sure.
So did you start out your very first instrument on drums?
Yes, it was. When I was 4, I was always caught banging on my parents' Revereware in the kitchen, and so they decided reluctantly to buy me one of those little toy drum sets, and my dad was thinking, great, here we go. We're going to buy this thing for Christmas, and 6 weeks later, I'm going to be taking it to the dump on Gerber Road. But no. I coveted that little, and it wasn't even a real drum set. It was like, I don't know what
Sure.
it was just thrown together, bass drum with this wonky pedal and 2 toms to the side and a triangle, little dingy cymbal, brass, and a wood block. And so I played this thing, but I would try to play to records that my parents had. And so I wasn't just, hitting things. I was trying to, play along in tempo.
Now, were your parents musical?
My mother was at the time a semi-professional singer and pianist. My dad was not a musician, but a massive music fan. He grew up over on San Ynez Way, off of Folsom in Sacramento, and had lots of classical music growing up, and I had a lot of that as well. So yeah, my brother plays guitar, and my sister didn't play an instrument. But again, a massive music lover. My sister is singing all the time. Thankfully, when I'm not around. Sorry, I'm kidding. At any rate, so I coveted that drum set. And this kid down the street, Bobby Payne, I'll never forget him. He was the first one who put a hole in the drum head.
Oh, no.
I was distraught. Oh, my God. He was out that door, never to be seen. At any rate, so when I was 6, my parents rented me a snare drum, and it was back in the early, God, what are we looking at here? Probably like about 1970 or so. And Bear Flag Elementary, where I was in elementary school, they had hired a drum guy who's still around, I think, Kenny Horton, to teach drum lessons. And then after that, it was an after school thing on Mondays. And was the reason I left the Cub Scouts is that Cub Scouts was at the same time the drum lessons. So thankfully.
So you say this was 7th grade?
Second grade.
Oh, okay.
I was I don't know, 6 or 7. Yeah, really, really young. And again, thanks to my parents, big music lovers, made sure that I had proper lessons, good instruments, Yeah, and you would have thought, oh, drummer? Oh, absolutely not. You're not coming into the house. And no, no, quite the contrary. My drums were never in the garage. They were always in the living room with my mother's baby grand piano and my brother's guitars. So that was never really an issue. So I started taking snare drum lessons, and then it went on to oh gosh, I was taking drum lessons at Klein Music for a number of years until I was about 13 or 14. Anyway,
Well, let me ask you a little bit about those lessons. Were they just strictly rudimental lessons?
in the beginning, it was, yes, it was of the a traditional grip drumming, but yeah, it was out of the Benjamin Podemsky drum method, and then I had a couple of the regular band methods that were big at the time. A tune a day was one.
Probably Belden Band Builder, one of those.
Oh, this is stuff way before then. The Rubank book. I mean, I'm telling you, it was a long time ago, Dan. Anyway, so yeah, with that type of stuff, and then my brother was in a sort of like a combo in high school, and they would have rehearsals at my parents' house, and Keith Bales, the drummer in the band, left his drums over one weekend as they were preparing for some performance, and he said, "Look, I don't want you playing my. I know what you're going to do. I don't want you playing my drums." And as soon as his mom had picked him up, and you could see the brake lights, go around the corner, right over there, straight as a shot, and then tried to actually just mechanically do with the hands and feet, what my ears told me to do. And that was when I was 9. And then my parents rented me a drum set from Klein's, took drum lessons there for a number of years. And things then just went from there, from just merely drums to then taking piano lessons and percussion lessons, vibraphone, timpani, all that sort of thing.
Well, back when you first started on set, what was the style of music that caught your ear? Were you like the rest of us, listening to the radio?
I was, yeah, mostly that, yeah, mostly early 70s rock and roll, although my parents had a bunch of, lots of jazz records, a lot of the standard singers of the day, and prior to that. So I was lucky to be brought up with a real cornucopia of music styles, from classical to jazz, lots of musicals, Rodgers and Hammerstein, all that sort of business. So it was just, I had heard a lot. And so, but primarily I was taking drum set to learn how to play rock tunes. I wanted to be in a rock band, and that's what I, wanted to do. And thankfully that ran through my system and got out fairly quickly. As a result of, I get back to my parents, the coolest people on the planet, I'm telling you. I had the opportunity to play in a bar when I was 14 with a couple of guys, and it was a combo. But your parents had to stay with you because it was a bar. They were serving alcohol, and clearly I was a minor. But they allowed me to do that, and it was like my first paying gig. And I thought, wait a second, you're going to pay me? Whoa, backtrack. Pay me money to do something I enjoy doing anyway? Okay.
Guitar based drums type of thing.
I'm sorry?
Guitar based drums type of thing.
Exactly, precisely. Yeah, typical sort of, trio. Gary Stein was playing guitar, and a fellow by the name of Bill Hendricks was playing bass. And we played this place in Ileton called the Hotel Del Rio for several weeks during the summer, and I took all that money and of course sunk it into drum gear, as any 14-year-old kid would do. Oh, wait a minute, no, I tell a lie. I also bought my first pair of Birkenstocks.
Oh my.
The drum gear I still have, the Birkenstocks long gone. But yeah, so that's kind of where I started playing rock drums, and then got more into jazz and the classical stuff in my teenage years.
Okay. Now, who was it? Was it your high school director that got you to start playing mallets and such, or is that even earlier?
No, it was actually prior to that. The drum teacher that I had at Klein Music, and I wish I could find him to this day so I could give him a big hug. There was a fellow by the name of Dick Gould was his name. He taught drums at Klein Music, and he looked exactly like Dr. Johnny Fever, which was even cool. At any rate, he ended up getting a state job, maybe for the water resources or something like that. He got a regular day, steady day gig. And this young guy, Joe Krenko, was a percussion student, percussion major at Cal State Sacramento in the late 70s. And he got that job. And so he started being my drum teacher. And he said, have you ever been to a percussion ensemble concert? And I was like, no. I was still playing drums in band. You know, I would play timpani every now and then, but because my treble clef reading wasn't terrific, and there was always a girl who always hogged the bells. You know, former flute player always hogging the bells. And I really hope she's not watching either. Anyway, so I kind of shunned away from that. But then when Joe invited me to this percussion ensemble concert, and it was Mr. Ron Holloway was the conductor, and eventually became my percussion teacher at Sac State. It was the first time I'd ever seen orchestral percussion music, just orchestral percussion music, playing all these wonderful sounds. Timpani, vibraphone. There was a marimba quartet playing these Bach things, which were terrific. And so I'm sitting there in the audience with my mom, and I said, typical me, right? I want one of those that I can have for my birthday. That I'll have for Christmas. Next year, that birthday, I'll have that one. And of course, these things are thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just 2 years ago when I bought my new set of Vibes, that was $5.5 grand, and that was on sale. Not to mention I got timpani in the garage and all these other things. Yeah. So it was through Joe that turned me on to orchestral percussion, and but still maintaining, you know, set drums. And he was the first person, and we're still friends to this day. He's up in Seattle. He is the conductor of the Northwest Boys Choir, and also is, I think, assistant conductor of Seattle Symphony. At any rate, so he's still up there, still working very, very much. I see him every time I go up there because my son is in Seattle. He works for the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation when he graduated UW. At any rate, so he was the one who really got me through all that percussion. I jumped a step. He was the first person that turned me on to sort of like the jazz rock thing that was happening in sort of 75, 76, 78. So he turned me on to Blood, Sweat, and Tears with
Chicago
Transit Authority. And he would say, he'd give me, like, let's say Chicago 2. Great record. He'd say, all right, Ballet from a Girl from Buchanan, do the first 2 tracks for next week. And this is long before, you know, sheet music. I think there were a few play-alongs at the time. There was probably Music Minus One that Jim Chapin had done. There was, anyway, and they were all records. Oh, there was a couple Dick Grove things I went through with him with that as well. It was the big
Jamie Abersol.
Yeah, but we didn't quite use. I don't know why we didn't have access to that stuff. But at any rate, so it was, my homework was to go home, stick on the headphones, and attempt to mimic what Bobby Colomby was doing, or Danny Seraphin, and that was, talk about opening up your ears and being forced to do that. And so, you know, you listen a gazillion times. I mean, I can basically scat every little drum riff there is in Chicago too, from having played it, you know, how many hundreds of times, and having no music, you know, making sure the needle went onto the record just right. So
that'd be pretty intimidating for a younger player. Just hear the polyrhythms on the bass drum. You know, you go
right, exactly. And he was very forgiving in my early days. He was very, very forgiving. And so I did a lot of drum set with him, especially that kind of thing. I then took piano lessons with him. And then the year before this would have been 1978, maybe, he had finished at Sac State with his degree in music, his bachelor's degree in music. And he was also he's an excellent organist. So he was kind of like double major. He was a student of John Lewis's on organ and a student of Mr. Holloway on percussion. And so Joe went up to UW with a couple of other guys that were majors there, Mark Wardlaw and John Muleisen. And so he left, but the year before he left, I said, you know, hey, Joe, I'd like to do some timpani stuff. So he worked it out for me to have lessons with him every week on a Saturday at Sac State, room 329, where the big timpani were, the good timpani were. And during the week, I would stay after school at Sam Brannan Junior High, now a middle school, and Mr. Werschmidt would allow me to practice. And there were a couple of vacation times, a Christmas and an Easter, and we had one of those big, huge Ford LTD station wagons, like a Brady Bunch station wagon. And he would allow me to bring these timpani home, which, because the car was so vast, you could still get a 29, a 26, and a 23 in there, which was cool. You couldn't get the 32 because it was just too wide. At any rate, so I took private timpani lessons for a year, and then he left, and then he reckoned me, and then now by this time I would be a junior in high school. Yeah, that's about right. And then that's when I went to taking full-blown marimba lessons. I borrowed an instrument I went to Kennedy High School in Sacramento when Nick Angelo was there. I was not part of the marching band. I was part of the orchestra because the marching thing is not for me.
Excuse me for asking a nerd question.
Please.
When you learned timpani, was he teaching you German or French grip?
Primarily German. I could cite you chapter and verse why one is better than the other, but there's loads of academes that could clearly argue another way.
I was just curious.
Yeah, and then so I took 2 years of marimba, before, and this is even before I got to college. You know, so I had years and years of snare drum, drum set, piano, full year of timpani, 2 years of 2 to then 4 mallet, and then college started, and yeah, then everything kind of snowballed from there, and the rest happened. So I had this nice palette of different instruments to play, you know, and so hopefully the phone might ring a little bit more, which thankfully it did.
Just for as you may have heard through my other interviews, I teach also, or I have taught.
Yep.
In the past, and so that's why some of the nerd questions.
Oh, absolutely. This is my I don't know where the time went, but this is my 30th year as a public school music educator.
When you go from a snare, whether you're using traditional to matched, or you're going from timpani to mallets, all of those have specialized grips. And you believe that the same? That's what I'm going to ask. Do you believe that the same grip can be slightly modified, or do you think you have to go with a full muster? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's because I'm right in the middle of that right now. So let's talk snare drum just for a second, and you will get people that will tell you, no, forget this, Simpson, you're insane. You know, put that stuff down; it's bad for you. So I started off conventional, as virtually everybody did in the day, and now it's come way back with you know, the DC. Well, DCI has always been around, but people doing more in a traditional sense. So conventional is coming back. Now, when I was 18 and I was starting at Sac State, I was using both conventional and matched. Obviously, you know, matched for all my mallet instruments, and then conventional for drum set and snare drum. But I found it so difficult because to keep up that thing is very time consuming, and more time than I felt like spending on it. So that's when I went full blown matched with everything. When I went to, hang on, I'll grab a set of mallets. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So when I was first starting 4 mallets, wait, I thought this was trad jazz, not mallet day.
It's all right.
When I first started 4 mallet, I started using what is known as scissor grip.
Okay.
But what I found was I would get these incredible Charlie horses in the middle of my palm. And you know what that feels like when it's on the back of your hamstring? Now think about that in the middle of your hand. So then somebody introduced me to, of course, you know, your Musser grip, or with a thumbs up on top, Stevens grip. I felt muscle grip to be a much more natural. God, this is really nerdy. Then when I bought my vibraphone a year ago, I was using a traditional marimba grip to play vibraphone. Now, what makes this grip great is that the bulk of the time your inside mallets tend to be more on your sharps and flats. And those bars are, of course, raised. The vibraphone is completely flat. Pardon me. So I thought, okay, well, this isn't working. And so then I went and I did a bunch of, the net is a dangerous place, you know. I went and watched a bunch of Gary Burton videos and saw what he was doing, which is similar to scissor grip, but the one stick is around the other side. So you still have your movement. One stick stays stationary and the other one then moves. So I started using that grip just before Christmas. Now, mind you, I've been playing muscle grip for 40 years, right? And it's like trying to do something you've been doing forever, but you haven't. So I've changed grip to the muscle grip, Burton grip, because it seems to be easier for me. But there's a massive learning curve when it comes to learning a new grip. I mean, what we have to do as percussionists and drummers is just so different. Anyway, so yeah, here endeth my sermon for today on four mallet playing.
No, I appreciate it.
I started taking lessons again as well. So I stumbled across this terrific vibraphone player in England last Christmas. My mother-in-law, when my wife is British and I spent a lot of time there and did my post-grad there.
Oh, that answers another question I had. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get there. Anyway, so she got me this terrific CD. Great vibe work. And I'm thinking, why do I know this guy's name? You know, what is it? You know, I get the word Beaujolais. Yeah, wine. Yeah, great. And then I realized on Facebook, I kept getting all these, you know, suggested friends, realizing that he was one of them. And I'm listening to this record. I friend him, and to find out he actually knew my old drum teacher back in England, Trevor Tompkins, and plays with him. And so anyway, so I've ended up doing some online lessons with him. And because he's more of a street player, he kind of came to percussion the back door. He explains things where I go, oh, now I get what they were trying to teach me 35 years ago. Anyway, so.
Well, it's all, yeah, I understand that very much so. Not only that, not only are there different paths to learning things, but there are just different ways of learning, you know, whether.
I'm very much a visual learner. That's one thing I found out through my teaching is I look back and I go, oh, I was a visual learner. I had to see it done. Makes sense now.
Yeah, but well, the question you just covered was, I had noticed in your bio that you do spend a lot of time in the UK, and I was going to ask you why, but now the answer is
okay.
obvious.
Well, how much time do you have? Okay, it started. So my brother-in-law, my sister's husband is British. He came over here from Watford, a town in Hertfordshire, about 20 miles outside of city of London. At any rate, so make a long tragic story short, brother and sister married brother and sister. So I ended up meeting his sister when I went over there on a trip. We ended up getting married. I moved over there, trying to seek my fame and fortune. At any rate, so I played in a number of bands and orchestras there in and around the London area. And I wanted to come home and because the weather was getting a bit much. And at any rate, so, and I saw a bunch of my friends on a trip home and they were all doing post-grad degrees. And so I thought, well, I would like to do a post-grad degree, but maybe it might look a little bit better on paper if I did a post-grad degree over here, which is what I ended up doing. And at the time, the three major music schools were the Royal College of Music, the Royal Academy, and the Guildhall School, where I went. And in 1988, neither the Academy nor the college had jazz programs. And I wanted to go to a place where I could do both. And Guildhall had both a jazz program and a classical program. The problem was they weren't chartered by the Queen to actually give the MA letters. So I found a school, City University, which is now London University, where you could get your actual MA letters, and you did all of your academia in Islington or Farringdon, where City is, but you then did all of your practical at the Guildhall. So I got the best of both worlds, being able to study at Guildhall. Charles Fulbrook was my percussion teacher, and Trevor Tompkins was my drum teacher. Still friends to this day, lovely man. So, and then I played loads of bands and have tons of friends from that time when I lived there. I was there from 1986 to almost 1990. And my wife at the time, Alice, and I split up about a year later. I went back to school, started, getting my credential. Wooden Nickel kind of started, and then again, I was not planning on being married 3 times, but here we are. I'm very popular. What can I tell you? So Diane and I got married. We actually met my previous wife on a Wooden Nickel trip in Medford, Oregon. She was our driver, and so we got married, had our 2 children. Kyle and Sarah. Kyle will be 24. Sarah will be 21. And we ended up splitting up, 19 years ago. The kids were very young. And I ended up hooking up with one of my old school friends, Evie Ayers. And we ended up getting married, and we've been married 18 years, and she lives here, and we've got a lovely house and a lovely life. She was part of my circle of friends of musicians. We've been, as I said, we've been married 18 years, so we're not friends anymore. Anyway, she puts up with my junk, with all my drums and stuff. Her area of expertise is in arts management. And she currently runs the Music in the Vineyards Chamber Music Festival that happens in August. Last year, of course, was all virtually. But she has experience working for everything from the London Symphony Orchestra, English Pocket Opera. The biggie one is she was assistant manager at the stables at Wavendon, working for Sir John Dankworth and Dame Cleo Lane. Mm. And so that's her area. And then also as a small sideline, I've actually known my mother-in-law a year and a half longer than my wife. Reason being, I was playing drums in her band with her husband at the time, John. And because Evie was away at school and I was playing gigs, I never saw her at the house, when I would go over there for rehearsals or talk over music. And she comes up to me at this one gig and she says, well, my mom. And I said, well, who's that? She says, well, Lizzie Grumbridge. I said, oh, of course, absolutely. Anyway, friends for 33 years, been married for 18. So that's the tie to England. I go back every summer. I see my friends from school. I've gotten up to some other academic antics at Oxford University, doing some things with their sound archive at the Philip Bate Museum of Instruments at the Faculty of Music in Oxford, and all kinds of things. I just love going back. My mother-in-law allowed me to have a set of drums, my own set of drums, in her attic. So whenever I go back and play with my friends, we'll do gigs in pubs and clubs, and I'm playing with my friends again, like I was 25.
Now, everything you've just told me, having to do with your academia and your world travel, and has nothing to do with Wooden Nickel or Dan Hicks.
Yeah, well, about that. So, it's an interesting story. How I got into Wooden Nickel, and this is all just after I came home from England. So I moved home. Alice and I split up. I was getting my teaching credential, and I was just looking for work in and around Sacramento. I subbed with Sacramento Symphony. Did a bunch of work with John Skinner's band, who's sadly no longer with us. Another fellow, Bill Race, had a band, and they played, birthdays, weddings, big, huge corporate dues, what have you. And when I was playing a gig with John Skinner, there was a sax player by the name of Mike McMullen, who's a terrific sax player, great composer. At any rate, so I was doing a gig with John Skinner, and I'm standing backstage with he and Mike Bobo, and no, it wasn't Mike Bobo. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And Mike says, "Hey, this guy that I'm working for, Stan Mark, is looking for a drummer."
Oh, you were part of that Stan Mark crew also.
I was, yeah. The last fatal blows. So that was kind of the thing with Wood Nickel. So and again, I was just looking for work. I was doing my student teaching. I would take any $30 gig. Sadly, there's still $30 that would come along because I was trying to make rent and pay my school fees and all that. So, and I've got the disc right here, or cassette, right? Okay, I got another one of his as well. So they were Stan was working on the Jubilee album, and they had rented out the stage at the Delta King, the big boat, down in old Sacramento. And he said, well, it's trad jazz music. And I said, well, I know a little bit about trad jazz. I've done some Dixieland things back when I was in college with Hal Needham and some other people. And so I said, yeah, I'm aware of the style. Kind of lying, really. But again, I needed a gig, like anybody. I was looking for a gig.
Yeah, you do what you do to get the gig.
Right. And so he said, if you get the gig, it would meet a bunch of work. They do a bunch of festivals. And so I thought, okay, I'll go. And I didn't know anybody in the band at the time, or so I thought, other than Mike. And so I go to Will Call. He's got the tickets waiting for me. And I sit down in my seat. And I hear in the foyer, ba-dum, ba-da, ba, 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 and then drapes open, and there's Bonnie thwacking a big old bass drum, Merle Corbett playing snare drum, and they all march in. And I'm thinking, this is what you want me to do? don't you know who I am, dear boy?
Well, Bonnie did play percussion in her high school, too.
That's right, she did. She played bass as well. And of course, Bonnie and I dated when I was at American River College back in the early days. So I knew Bonnie well. And so she comes.
That's why she asked me to do this interview.
Oh, so it's Bonnie? Anyway, so Bonnie comes in, thwacking this bass drum. And it's like, as soon as they pass, right, that's it. I'm off. I'm not sticking around for another thing. And I went home. That was it. And so Mike McMullen calls me the next morning, and he says, so how'd you like the gig? I said, oh, well, as soon as I saw Bonnie hitting the bass drum, I went and got my car, came home, and I watched a movie, I think. And he said, no, give it a chance. Stick around. That's just theater, just stick around, see what happens. So I went to the second night, and it's like, okay, I can do this. And then Stan changed, I'm trying doing this diplomatically. Stan changed drummers. Thankfully, I was that drummer, and I got in a month before the Sacramento Jubilee. And it gives me a stack of charts like that. And rehearsing, I don't know, probably 2-3 times a week, something like that, at this office that he kind of converted into a home next to the old Buggy Whip restaurant on like Marconi and El Camino in North Sacramento. And so I was with that band. We did a bunch of festivals all summer, and then through the fall. And then Matt Perrine, who you know,
sure,
Matt moved to New Orleans. That tells you how long ago it was. And at any rate, so the band, we would have rehearsals, and so that's where I met Otis, who at the time was known as Mark. Otis, Mike, Bob, Brady, Bonnie, and then Eric. Eric came in for a while until he got Buddy Apfel, who I think lives in Arizona now. At any rate, and he was always, and again, if you're watching this, I apologize, Stan, but he was always really kind of shouty. If you did something right, he was great, but if you didn't, he got shouty. That's a technical term. Perhaps you might not understand. And so it's kind of like, well, no wonder Merle was always nervous because you were shouting at him. Anyway, so things digressed into this horrid train wreck. Various people going off at various times, and that was also when I'd gotten my teaching credential. And so it's like, okay, well, I better not be out every weekend, doing stuff. I need to focus on my teaching job, it was my first teaching job in Woodland, California. And so the whole thing kind of blew up. And then at the beginning of the following year, in 1993, I got this phone call from Bob. And one thing I loved about that group was that we had fun. We laughed a lot. If we weren't, in rehearsal, they say, "Hey, you were having a barbecue over at the house. Why don't you come on over?" And so we were like this group of. It was kind of like the TV show before Friends. It was kind of like Friends. At any rate, these people very soon became my friends, and we had a certain sound which was I felt was terrific. And granted, I mean, trad wasn't my thing, but I started to learn more about it because I felt it was incumbent that I do so. And then we did a lot of things that were kind of our own thing. So anyway, so Bob calls up and says, we're thinking of putting this thing back together. Different trumpet player, and would you want to play? And it was like, Bob, yeah, absolutely. So we went into this studio, somebody's house. I can't remember his name at the moment. Anyway, so we did this. Where is it? Actually, I prepared. We did this demo CD to kind of send out to festivals and stuff, and then Wood and Nickle started, and then we were together 10 years. And thinking about it, as I was saying, I was kind of preparing a bit for this. I found a couple of things that I'd like to share, if I may. So here is a promo picture of Stan Mark and his River City Stompers. And so this is Otis, Bonnie, Bob, Stan, myself with this dreadful mullet, Brady, Mike McMullen, and then Buddy Apfel. And you'll probably get some pretty nasty glare there, but
that guy, see it.
The usual thing. And then, of course, just like, when you were in school and they would take a picture for you were at a festival, they say, and now a funny one. Me about to smash a snare drum over Stan's head. And so the rest was history. And then it became this kind of machine, which in its heyday, it was a fun ride. Man,
yeah.
Ride. I got to meet people I never would have met. I got to go places I never would have gone. And relationships that last to this day. That's one great thing about music, So at any rate, we had CDs. Bob put together this fabulous newsletter, and I found a couple of them, and I want to read you something, if you'll allow me.
Oh, please.
Okay, so this is, I don't know what the date is, but it would have been, anyway. So these newsletters came out quarterly, and the subject heading was Nickel of the Quarter. And this one was Eric Clevin, who I miss. Whenever we went anywhere, I always roomed with him because you knew you were going to get an education. One of the most well-read human beings I've ever met in my life. This is, here we go. What attracted you to the tuba, Eric? You mean besides the shine? Yes. Well, I suppose I'd become aware of it primarily through its absence. On clarinet, he was started off as clarinet. On clarinet, I was playing in an pa band, and since we had no tuba, there was never any just pa, which is very Eric. It was pretty awkward. I felt responsibility to do something. And the rest is history? Yeah, pretty much. I went to Catholic school for 9th and 10th grades, but continued to play with the community bands and orchestras. Well, it sounds like you got a rather late start and then go to a high school with no music program and 2 more years. You must have felt somewhat behind. He says, no, this is the best bit. No, not really. The tuba is typically a good instrument for slow people. As typical Eric, is hysterically funny. Okay, then here's another one. This was letters to the editor, okay? And most of these, the bulk of these are made up by Bob, who is hysterically funny, as you well know. It says, why did trombonist Bob Williams get his hair cut? Well, we really didn't care for we didn't care for his hair before, but we really hate it now. What's the story? Answer. Until last December, Bob had spent the last 3 years attending business administration classes at CSU Sacramento. He did this not only to keep his lovely wife, songstress and entertainer Brady McKay immersed in the luxury to which she had become accustomed, but also to avoid the necessity of living the undisciplined and immoral lifestyle engaged by the members of the group who are full-time musicians. When it became apparent that Bob would defy the odds makers and actually graduate, he decided to cut his hair to improve his chances of employment in the business community. My favorite one here comes from Ken Coulter. Remember Ken?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Question, very flat out. What the hell is wrong with you guys? Answer, Mr. Coulter is no doubt referring to the news staff's failure to mention the band's impending participation at the 7th annual Mammoth Lakes Jazz Jubilee in our last newsletter. Please see page 1 for a humble apology. And then my last one, I promise. There's this really great British comic book called Viz. And it's not for children. There's nothing dirty to it, but other than there's lots of foul language. And in the words of Mick Jagger, it may be sophomoric schoolboy toilet humor, but I like it. There's a section of Viz called Top Tips. And so I decided to come up with a few top tips myself. Wait for it. Or maybe not. Okay. Put toothpaste on a rubber band instead of using chewing gum. It saves money and it's better for your teeth. It's probably good for the environment too. Next, okay, turn your backyard into Disneyland by charging $20 to get in, $5 for some melted ice cream, and make people wait in line for 4.5 hours to ride your lawnmower. And then my last one, I can see you're riveted. Always carry signal flares in your car in case you forget your drumsticks, but be careful not to smoke on stage. So these are the antics that we used to get up to, and you know the fun things that would happen on stage, and I think kind of we were the nephews nephews and nieces people just didn't talk about. That was kind of our role on the scene because we were somewhat irreverent, and we did things to the music our ears told us to kind of do, not because it, as Bob used to say, we're not your mother's jazz band. And because of all of our backgrounds, classical, jazz, ska, whatever it may be from everybody in the band, you have this incredible encyclopedia of music from which to choose. And we'd be at a rehearsal at Bob and Brady's old house when they were living on the river. And then later when they bought their house, we'd have a rehearsal and think something would morph, something would go, oh, well, let's try this here and let's try this here and then see what would happen. And then it just happened. And so that's kind of, we were kind of the irreverent band on the scene. And it was a good 10 years, a lot of fun. I miss it. Primarily the laughter, and I think if we came back to it, it would be a different band, but I think it'd be everyone coming back all together because if everyone's had so many more experiences since then. I think it would have a glimmer of what it used to be, but something even better. But that's just me,
I understood that they actually tried to mount a reunion concert.
Well, we did one thing. There was a lady that used to follow the band, Mary Jane Richardson, and she had passed away last year. And she was a massive fan of the band and helped used to babysit Dexter and Levi when they were really young. And then helped send Dexter to the trad camps. I taught at the trad camps for a couple of years in the 90s. And so it's a big fan of the band. And then Bob said, hey, it would be kind of like a nice dying wish to reform and have Dexter play, because being the son that she used to look after. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds like a really terrific idea. Let's do that. And, everybody's on board, right? And Bob said, well, we're getting there. And I said, well, it's not Wood Nickel unless Brady's there, you know. So yeah, we reunited for one night, and it was a lot of fun. It was basically everybody but the other. Oh God, hang on. I'm old. I can't remember names. Shush. Where is it? Hang on. The other sax player. Why am I missing up his name? Anyway, so it was essentially, and he's probably watching this now going, Simpson! So it was Otis, Dave, Bob, Bonnie, Dexter, me, and Brady. And we did a number of tunes, and it was odd, but it was fun. I had a good time. And, you know, would I be into doing it again? When? You know? So, yeah, it was good. Anything more on the cards at the moment? Nothing that I've heard. No. But yeah. And then I think, you know, every band, this may, I may be just blowing smoke, but this may be in your experience. I've found in my lifetime, a band has a certain sell by date, or it's best. It just has a life. It has,
Sure.
and then it ends. And that is true of that group and a couple of other things I've been in. That was true of working with Dan Hicks, which I loved, and that was kind of, so there was a couple of years when Wooden Nickel ended in 2002. End of 2002. There was a couple of years where I was doing orchestral stuff and various other things, and then the phone rang, and it was Dan Hicks, and I put up with his abuse, and he liked the way I played brushes, so that was that, and it was a lot of fun too.
Were you actually using brushes or hot rods?
Actually, a number of them. Playing for Dan, very rarely actually used drumsticks over the 11 years. So it had me up my game when it came to brush use. So quite frankly, I'm using about probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 different kinds of brushes. I've got 2 degrees of wire, telescoping wire. They've got the regular Regal tip wire brush, and there's a thicker one, which is the Jeff Hamilton model, which I like a lot. Same sort of feel, but you can bring the, if the dynamics require it, you can bring it up. Then I've got the blast sticks, which are the plastic ones. Then I've got the whiskers, which are the white plastic ones, and the hot rods. And I guess maybe that's it. And then I would mix them up, you know, use a plastic stick in this hand because I was doing a more a straight 8 thing, or something else. So it caused, his music caused me to look at brushes differently. And I got a number of great DVDs to help my learning. I took a couple extra lessons down in the Bay Area. And as much as I hate corporate America phrases like lifelong learner. Well, if you're not a lifelong learner, you're dead. So anyway, that really.
Sure, I understand.
Whatever, you know, like one's workbench, right tool, right job.
Well, listen, Brian, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Oh, happy to. Thank you. I'm honored deeply.
Oh, well, in that case,
How much money do you want?
that's right. I'm just saying, I talked to Bonnie, as you saw by the interview, but I still consider her a dear friend, and all you guys. Bob was wonderful. Bob gave me one of those USB drives of all the albums.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful.
I told you I prepared.
That's a wonderful thing to have. But anyway, thank you once again.
Pleasure was mine. Okay. Also, one last thing. I've spent the past 17 years as principal timpanist with the North State Symphony. So shout out to my orchestral friends. And if anyone needs a drummer, I'm in the book.
Timpani, are you playing Yamahas?
The school are playing, yeah. It depends on where we're playing, but yeah, we're doing it. Sadly, they stopped making the 6000 series, which is a much better tuning thing. The new ones are terrible. If I had I mean, if I had,
Hmm.
I'd get a set of like, well, then they don't even make them anymore, but Walter Lights or the Precision Timpani out of Colorado. Terrific drums.
All right, sir. You take care now.
You too. You too. Very terrific to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm available, everybody. I'm available.
I'll let him know.
Okay.
Bye now.
Take care.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan posts new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.